All right, y'all, what's going on? This is the most informal, non-high production level KJ5G podcast I've done so far. No, I've done actually some way worse than this. I'm just chilling in my hotel room, and I want to do something a little bit different than normal. I wanted to do a Q&A podcast, and this one is basically me taking stuff off my social media. And I have TikTok, by the way, for those that don't know, KJ5G TikTok, that has interaction-wise like doubled in my followers. I didn't really mess with TikTok, and all of a sudden people are just the algorithm switched and people are finding me there. And they're like, man, I thought you were dead. I thought you disappeared. I thought you were in the witness protection program. I'm still alive, people. All right. Anyway, so I do a thing every Tuesday called Too Many Questions Tuesday, where I take questions off my social media. And these are a bunch of questions I did not get to. And so I thought I'd do just something a little bit different and just as simple as that. So, hey, y'all, sometimes I don't have bells, whistles, nor exciting things, except for just pure, incredible content and me holding my iPhone. Here we go. Let's go with the first question right here. It says, what do you think about the uprising in Christian hip hop? That's interesting because here's what I would say about this. I came in at a generation of Christian hip hop 25 years ago, maybe 30 years ago, that it was, now there was people before me, of course, so shout out to those pioneers. We were just starting to get some mainstream acceptance. That's the best way I can say it. I think the church world and the music industry was about 10 to 20 years behind from a gatekeeper standpoint, meaning those that were in charge, those that actually pull the strings, those that actually make it happen, those that actually platform, they were about 10 to 20 years older than we were. And because of that, they came from a different reference. You know, they had a different angle. There was some, but the reality was we were, just starting to fight for a place at the table. So what has happened now? For lack of a better term, guys like myself, that we're now in our 40s, 50s, probably pushing 60s, the Gen X version, we've probably come into prominence, right? We've actually come into where we've become the gatekeepers. Whether that's in the church world, we're now the pastors, the lead pastors, the head youth pastors. We're the ones that, are occupying the spaces that shut us out 25 years ago. And then we're the ones that are kind of running the industry, music industry, whatever's left of that. So that's why you see a more prominent uprising of Christian hip hop. It's not considered niche or youth music or urban music. It's considered just music, right? The two genres that still have actual relevance and whatever you want to call it, that have momentum, the big two genres in Christian music, in my opinion, are worship music and hip hop. So that's really what's happening. I think it's great. I mean, I think, again, we all stand on the shoulders of those that went before us. In this particular case, that's what's happened, and what was considered left of center is now dead center. And that's just the way it is. And we're here to stay. So that's really why I think it is. That's what I think about. I think it's great. I think it's readily available. So like anything, when it was niche, you had to really push hard to be a part of it, which created a smaller industry, but a more committed industry. Whereas now anybody with a microphone, music in general, can just put something out. So it's flooded. That's the other side, is that there's a lot. So within a lot, it's hard to rise to the top. It's hard to establish yourself. It's much harder to establish yourself because there's so many opportunities. But I love the fact that what Christian hip hop can do now is that anyone can step up to the plate and hit a home run. Simple as that. That's the deal. So let me go ahead to the next question. It said, I'm assuming it's a band that said this. We have been told that we mention Jesus too much. We're an indie artist. I thought that was what the whole point was to talk about Jesus. So I'm assuming what you're saying is, in your quest to get your music out there from an industry standpoint, they have told you that there's too much Jesus talk in your music. Well, that's interesting. Here's what I'll say. We live in a day and age now where everybody has an audience, right? Basically, everyone has the opportunity to find their audience or their audience to find them. So you may just be looking for acceptance in a gatekeeper scenario that essentially you're going the wrong way, right? There are people out there that really love a lot of Jesus in their music, and that's just the reality. You just got to figure out a way to connect that audience to your music. If someone is standing in the way, whether that's an industry, label, promoter, whatever, or whatever your feedback has been, then you're going the wrong direction. That's the only way I could say it. Yes, you're right. It should be about Jesus, but here's what I'll say to that. And take what I say lightly, okay? There are books in the Bible that are blatantly theological, right? Hebrews, very theological book, right? Very blatant, very obvious. Paul or whoever wrote Hebrews was doing it with a purpose in mind, right? And then you have books like Song of Solomon or the book of Esther, that there's no mention of God ever in those two books, right? You could read the Song of Solomon and never hear about God one time. You could read Esther and be like, I've never heard it mentioned. So whether you mention Jesus a lot or you mention it a little or it's subtle, I believe there's space in music for all of that. You just might be putting your music in the hands of the wrong people. You have to find out the people that dig what you're doing and your angle. And we all bring our own conviction and our passion to it. So that's where I would say the answer to that is. Next question. Do you record your own stuff or has someone mix engineered for you? I have been self-recording for almost 23 years. And the reason being is because I got to a point where I didn't want to wait anymore. And so I got a laptop and a microphone and I just sort of figured it out. I was, instructed by my producers, whatever, but I just sort of figured it out. And I'll tell you, for me, that has been one of the best things I ever did, because for me, creativity comes like a wave and you got to catch the wave while it's going up. And so I love the fact that I can record whenever, however. So I just have a little microphone in my closet and I put a little, like a dead the booth around it, so to speak. And I record with a simple analog to digital Focusrite mixer or interface and a laptop. And that's literally it. Because for me, it's just really about getting a good recording, but then I would send it off to my producer. So in this case, that's Marty. Marty does the production, Marty does the mixing, and that's really it. Like, that's about all you need. Now, I will say this. I have found a plugin. It's called the SSL plugin for some of the stuff that I've just self-recorded that I'm going to just kind of mess around with. And I love the SSL plugin because basically it makes my vocals, it helps me mix my vocals. What I do is then I put the prompt into ChatGPT. And I put mix my vocals like this. What are the prompts? And I put a screenshot of the SSL plugin. Then it gives me the actual plugin dot buttons or metrics, whatever it is. I don't know what I'm saying. It gives me the metrics right back and I plug it in. And I've had actually a lot of really good success with that so far. I'm still messing with it, but that is a way that I do it. So no, I don't send it off, but that's kind of how I get down with that. Next question was whose idea was the mascots in the Do Your Thing video? Okay, so for those that have not seen the Do Your Thing video, it looks like a psycho Yo Gabba Gabba episode, and that was by design. The mascots in the Do Your Thing video was the director's idea. I don't think I was like, I need these type of mascots. I could have been. I might be wrong. That's a long time ago, but I would say probably what happened was he had the idea of this kind of like kids show, or maybe that was my idea. I'm spacing out. It was a long time. I mean, I remember shooting the video clearly. We were in the middle of nowhere in Ohio at like this, I think it was like Christian music television, like studio or something like that. That's where we shot it. And he had a bunch of sweet moms that came out. They were a part of it. And then the mascots, I still don't remember where we found those suits. Later on, I will say this, later on, those suits came out. I dressed my bass player and was the drummer dressed? I basically dressed them up in those mascot suits. We played a whole show with them as the backup band. It was in Columbus, Ohio. It was a Radio U show. I remember this. And people did not get the joke. Like, people were just like, what is... Like, they just stared at us like, I have a picture of it somewhere. Maybe I can find it. My bass player did love wearing that suit. He needed any excuse. God bless him, my man Rich. He did not need any excuse to put an outfit on, like to wear a mascot. He was down to be a mascot. So that was one of those things at the show where it was like, wouldn't it be crazy if we, and then we did. And then we were like, well, that was funny to us. Anyway, that's where the idea is for the mascots, definitively trying to do like a Yo Gabba Gabba episode. So that's what's up with that. A favorite up and coming or never heard of artist. All right, well, I don't know if they're never heard of, but I would say one of my favorite artists, and it has remained this way for a long time, is Mute Math. I've loved Mute Math's music since their first project, the Reset album, was it? And Paul Meany just put out a project a couple months back that I absolutely love because he's Mute Math, vocally at least. So I would say Mute Math would be one. King's Kaleidoscope. I'm probably saying people that you might know, but maybe you don't. So either way, King's Kaleidoscope is another group that I love that I think is doing some really innovative, creative type stuff, whether it's their hymnal project or whether it's, the project they got all those hip hop artists on, or just production wise. Very interesting music, very interesting, very creative, very left of center, very non-specific genre. I would say those two are artists that are some of my favorite that are up and coming that I've been vibing with quite a bit. I feel like there's another one. Like there's a worship group that I'm spacing on. Sorry, guys. First thing that goes is the mind. Also, it's early and I need some more coffee. All right, let me move to the next question. What are my thoughts on NF in terms of style and lyricism? All right, so I get this a lot. People want to know my opinions on other Christian rap and or NF. I get this at least once a month. Here's what I'll say about Nate. I'm gonna call him Nate because his mom called Nate. We're gonna take a little trip back in time. I think the year was around. It's got to be around 8, maybe 2007. I might have my date wrong here. It was somewhere around then when he was Nate Feuerstein. I played Big Ticket Festival, which is in North Michigan, which is very significant to me because I spent my summers in North Michigan. And Big Ticket Festival is one of my favorite festivals because it's right near where I spent my time at Higgins Lake. It's in Gaylord, Michigan. And I was playing probably the side stage. I think I headlined the side stage that day, or maybe I was playing at a mid-afternoon slot or late afternoon slot. And I always had a great show at Big Ticket Festival. They bought tons of merch. They loved me. It was Michigan. It was awesome. And before I went on, there was a guy on stage and, he was rhyming and he was a young kid. And I remember thinking, and I'm just going to say out loud, I was thinking, this is very derivative of Angry M, right? And I remember thinking like, man, if I've got to deal with the M comparisons from 8 years prior, and I'm not even trying, to pursue that. It's just happening. It's just falling on me. I remember thinking like, this is definitely more derivative. This is definitely more closer to it. I'm thinking like, man, if I got to go through this and I'm not even trying to pursue it, and this seems a little closer, and he's from Michigan, I'm like, man, it's going to be a challenge for this guy. That's all I remember thinking was like, he's going to have a hard time establishing his own identity. And then we came and we sat and we kicked it and like we ate lunch together back there backstage. And I just remember thinking like he's just a young kid, like he's a kid. And I say kid like I wasn't that much older then. I might have been in my 30s, early 30s. Let's see, if it was 07, 08, I was probably 32, 33. And he just seemed young to me. Like he reminded me of someone in his late or early 20s, right? And he had a girl there. I don't remember who she was. But anyway, that's all I remember. And I remember thinking like, man, this is cool. This is what I would expect for North Michigan. But I wonder if they're going to, I always thought like from like a business executive style. I always remember thinking like, this is going to be tough for him. And then he got signed to Exist Records, which my homie was a part of, and I knew a bunch of artists on the label, and I thought, okay, somebody has noticed what he's doing, and, he put out some stuff, and he was kind of puttering around the industry and doing some shows. Jump ahead, and next thing I know, he's signed to a major Christian label, and I thought, okay, well, clearly something has happened that has kind of elevated his space, and then next thing I knew, we were doing Camp Electric together. I used to do Camp Electric like every summer. That's Toby Mac's music camp. And then I got the time to kick it with him. Like actually sit down backstage. He was just coming out. And next thing I know, like I'm thinking like, okay, he's going to go on stage with just him and a drummer and it's rapid fire and blah, blah, blah. And I remember him getting up there and I don't want to say half the crowd left because that's not what happened. But I remember it was a very specific crowd because he was brand new and nobody knew him. And Camp Electric, while it's a great crowd, like they're music kids. So they're kind of like, they either like you or they're just like, I'm going to go hang out in the hallway and play my guitar. And I remember it was a very specific audience that stuck around to watch him. And he did a great job, but they stuck around to watch him. And I'm not going to, the audience, there was a lot of girls. I'll put it that way. There was a lot of girls that stuck around in that audience to watch him. I'm not saying it was just girls, but the girls definitely were like, enamored by his youthful, handsome appearance, right? So again, we did Camp Electric again, and I remember this is when I finally got to kind of know him, like kick it with him and talk with him. And I remember him saying, "This is going to be my last Christian music like venue, and then I'm going to go straight into the clubs or whatever." He's like, "They just don't really get me in Christian music." And I thought, okay, I could see that. You know what I mean? There might not be enough JPMs in your music, Jesus per minutes or whatever. And that's when we kind of really more got to know each other. Like we went to Whole Foods. Like he was really into running and into eating healthy. And I was kind of like the same thing. So I'm like, hey man, you want to go to Whole Foods and like eat dinner or something like that? I'm like, nope, no Christian rappers ever want to go to Whole Foods with me. They're all like, nah, man, I don't eat like that. Anyway, we went there. We talked about running. We talked about like, what his next steps were. And this is really before things really took off, blew up. And I remember kind of getting his number. And I'm like, man, I really want to stay in touch with you because I really kind of felt like if he's not careful, he's going to exist outside of the industry. And outside of the industry, while it's fine, and it's great, you should. It can be a very lonely place. It can be a very what's the word I'm looking for? A very spiritually dead kind of spot. And I thought, you know what? I think I said to him something like, I'm gonna text you every day for the next 20, 30 days. I'm gonna pray for you every day. And I started doing that. I think I did. I'm pretty sure I did this. And it wasn't much longer after that than things just went through the roof for him. And Never Let You Down came out like a year or two later. I had already kind of exited. I was about to exit the music industry. And this is where, for me, NF music was so powerful. I was filling in as a youth pastor for about 6 months. I was still touring, but I had about 6 months that I was filling in as a youth pastor. And I did a message called Three Perspectives on Hurt. And the message was about 3 different ways that people approach hurt and pain. And I had a youth group of about 120 kids, a lot of non-Christian kids. And I used the song by Logic. It was like his suicide song. I used Nate's song. And who else maybe I just did scripture as the third perspective. I don't remember. But I'm telling you, when I played Never Let You Down to those kids, and this was a rougher youth group, right? You could hear a pin drop in that place. And that's when it clicked for me. I don't know why it didn't really click to me until that moment. I thought, this is a great tool for discussing where people are at. It may not always present the answer, but it is a great tool for starting conversations. And that's a very powerful thing. So when you ask me about NF's music, here's what I say to it. I say it is a great tool for starting conversation. It is a great tool for making inroads with people and or speaking to people when they're at low points. And that's when I was like, I get it now. I get why this is so popular. I get why this is hitting on so many levels. I get and I understand the aggression and the intensity, why people want that, need an outlet for it. And that's what I have to say to that question, is that my opinion is irrelevant. Like, this music is popular for a reason, and I believe that God is using it for a reason. Now, I'll take it one step further. Again, I have not talked to him in a long, long time. I don't even know if his number is the same. We obviously I'm not in the industry anymore. And about a year or two ago, when the song Happy came out, I was at a really low point. I won't go into everything about it, but I'll just say this. That song is in my worship playlist, and there's a reason for it. Because he has a line, in the song where he says, why do I, basically he's just saying, like, why do I crave attention or I crave acceptance, but I push it away. And it wrecked me. Like, that line wrecked me because that's me in a lot of ways. Like, I was going through a rough period, crying out to God, trying to get healing for a lot of things. And now that went from me as an outside observer to, I get why this music speaks to people because it spoke to me. Like, it connected me to my creator. It's in my worship playlist because of that. And so that's my thoughts on NF. Like, I listened to his last EP that came out a little bit ago. I love the fact that he's talking about Gladwin, Michigan. I know exactly where he's talking about. Gladwin is 45 minutes from Higgins Lake. I know that type of town. I know the people that come from that type of town, and I get now the environment that created an NF, a Nate. And so I'm grateful for his music. I'm grateful for what it does. I have to say this, just purely artistic. His progression from angry, derivative type rapper to making songs that are bigger than a genre, bigger than the human, speak to the human experience. Like, he has far surpassed where he started to where he is now. Like, he is deserving 100% of all the accolades, of all the platforms, and I'm excited to see what happens. I'm just a fan in the crowd now, right? Simple as that. Very long answer. All right. Last question is this one. Thoughts on cessationists and or cessationism, and we'll wrap with this one. All right, so my thoughts on cessationism. For those who don't know what cessationism, it is the theological perspective that the gifts of the Holy Spirit have ceased. They have stopped. So there is no prophecy. There is no speaking in tongues. There is no, some might even go as far as there's no miracles anymore. That all the gifts of the Spirit have ceased, right? They ended with the apostolic age. Usually that's where that comes from. Now, this is just an observance, so just take it for what it is. I have always noticed people that stress heavily the sovereignty of God, right? God is sovereign over everything. God is sovereign over your salvation, meaning you cannot pick God. Only God can pick you. The Lord has picked his elect before the foundation of the earth was laid. He already knows who's going to be saved. He's already picked who's going to be saved. God is sovereign over everything. You cannot choose God. God can only choose you. You are dead in sin, et cetera, et cetera. If you know Calvinism, Reformed, those circles, you will hear the sovereignty of God spoken about quite a bit, right? This is the age-old debate. Man's free will versus God's sovereignty. Man's free will, how much is actually at play here? I've always been observative. I always thought it was weird that those that are so about the sovereignty of God will go, God doesn't do anything related to the gifts of the Spirit anymore. So you're saying he's sovereign over people's salvations, but he's not sovereign. He's completely doesn't believe in the sovereignty of miracles, the sovereignty of the gifts of the Spirit. And they'll kind of proof text a few different verses to speak about that. I'm like, you heavily emphasize the sovereignty of God in one area, and you downplay the sovereignty of God. Why couldn't God use gifts of the Spirit? Why would God stop doing miracles and or moving in that way? If you study the history of the nation of Israel, there's times where the word of the Lord was abundant, and there was times where it wasn't. And never once did, anyway, I could go off on a tangent. I'm not going to. Here's my thoughts. No, I'm not a cessationist. No, I don't think the Holy Spirit stops moving. No, I don't think God is limited by our human understanding. That is blasphemous almost in itself, in my opinion. So I don't think they've ceased. I think it still happens. Do I think there's abuse? Of course. Do I think that people fake stuff? Of course. When it comes to the gifts of the Spirit, I call them prophet liars. You're a prophet lie. What would I consider myself? I consider myself a charismatic with a seatbelt, right? God's word is the guardrails, but it is what it is, right? We may not agree until we get to the other side of heaven, and it's just that simple, all right? Anyway, short little KJ52 podcast. I hope you guys dug it. Always, you can hit me at KJ52 at KJ52.com. That is my email address. You can shoot that to me. Or if you like what you heard, drop a comment below. Put it there. I thank you guys for your support. I super appreciate it. I love y'all. I'm praying for y'all. I'm believing God for great things in you. And I think we're going to have a great 2026. All right, let's go.